Welcome to the Let's Talk with Paula show, where we talk about many, many things. We have all types of guests that come into our studio. And so today we have always a guest are very special to us. But I'm going to say we haven't seen Ron for a minute, so I'm glad that you're here.
Glad to be back.
You know, we thought you were trying to just stay away from us or something. You said something to offend you.
Oh, no. You know, we don't take things personal. We get.
I know we don't, because I say things with a passion. I'm not angry. It's just I have a passion to where, you know, I express something. But they understand. So I'll put that out there now.
Thank you. I appreciate it.
Yeah. So introduce yourself and then introduce these two gentlemen.
Fantastic. Well, you know, the audience knows me for wearing many hats. So tonight I'm wearing the hat of the chair of the Laurel Juneteenth Executive Committee. And it's through the committee that I met these fine gentlemen, these fine brothers in the political life and the community activist life. We have our council member, Martin Mitchell, and he's been one of the leading leaders in the movement for rent stabilization in Prince George County. And then we have Troy Griffith here, and he's also, might I say, and we'll talk about it another topic, but he's also the secretary of the Laurel Juneteenth Executive Committee, Planning Committee. So it was through that work that I met these brothers and thought it would be ideal to share the platform, Paula, and get into the topic of rent stabilization here throughout Prince George County.
And it's an honor to meet both of you gentlemen, and I'm also glad that you are working on that committee for Juneteenth now, you know, so, when, you know, because they were just talking about it at our board meeting as well. You know, what we're going to do for here in Bowie. And what we're going to do, I think we're running a little late. Y'all probably were running early. I think we're running
this year, Paula, you know. But the topic is rent stabilization and the new legislation here in Prince George County, and they're here to talk about the journey and what it means to them.
So, Councilman, let me ask you, what is your opinion on rent stabilization? I know I have mine, but.
Yeah, so, you know, I can give you my Reader's Digest version, and that's, you know, sum it up, I'm supportive of it. You know, some people call me the grandfather, right, like of rent stabilization. I don't like to carry that title, but, you know, I definitely like to spread awareness that, you know, it's one of the tools that we can use to help renters, you know, immediately. And so I'm definitely supportive, you know. I know we could talk more in depth. I don't know how do you want me to talk about why I support it? Is that
well? You know. Some people they really don't know what the term means.
Oh, sure. So rent stabilization. Rent stabilization basically means each year your rent generally goes up annually, and so rent stabilization means that it caps what your rent can increase to a certain percentage. And so whether that percentage is 3%, whether that percentage is the consumer price index CPI, whether it's 20%, you know, so that's what rent stabilization does. It sets a cap at what your rents can increase annually. So you have some type of stability.
So that's what they give to the homeowners, except for they call it homeowners assistance. Homestead. The homestead. It's the homestead does the stabilization for people that own houses.
Somewhat, but I mean, I would think of it like, you know, just being a regular homeowner. I mean, you know, being a homeowner is like a form of, you know, rent stabilization, rent control. I mean, you know what you're going to pay every year on your mortgage. You know, it's especially if you're in a fixed mortgage. You know what you're going to pay every year. You know, it's not going to go up. You're going to get the same percentage. So, you know, yes, you can of course talk about the homestead, but yeah, I mean.
See, Troy and I were a little spoiled. Troy also came from New York, so we got a little thing going. We had rent stabilization for years in New York, where, you know, the maximum, depending on the 1 year or 2 year lease, that 1 year was 3, increase to 2 year was 5. And so unless the rent stabilization board passed the next 2 years whenever they met to increase it, the landowners for the renters could not increase the rent unless they went through some other changes and stuff like that. So we knew from year to year, okay, I got a 2 year lease, then I'm paying 5%. I got a 1 year lease, then I'm paying 3%. There was no surprises at that time. And so, I mean, that's part of the whole notion and the effort to stabilize it, because and I'll let you do it, man.
No. I mean, no. He said it very well because a lot of the New York ones are more what you would call rent-controlled units, right? But for one, I think so the best thing that somebody said is like, you wouldn't even have rent control if the rent wasn't too darn high, right? So in a lot of cities and a lot of places, the rent has gotten skyrocketed. In New York, it's still one of the most expensive places, even with rent control, right? So,
exactly.
But yeah, like to his point, New York is places that have been using rent control or rent stabilization, for several years, and I feel like one of the biggest things that Troy could tell you is we hear a lot about the landlords and we hear a lot about the developers and we hear a lot about the business aspect, but we never hear about like, the benefits of like the stability and having rent stabilization in places where they have rent stabilization and how it actually affects the quality of life of like the people that live in those areas. A lot of times it's just about like, development. Our business is going to come. Are we going to continue to develop? So a lot of times it's never really about like, can this mother, feed, her family? Because we heard stories like that when we were testifying, when we were meeting people in the community, we heard stories like that. The fact that like people were, with the price of everything going up, they were struggling to like, am I going to pay my rent this month, or my kids are going to eat less?
Or am I going to buy medicine that my mother needs or I need or my children need?
And that's critical.
Yes.
People have made medical, and I've heard of people sharing medication, like especially like diabetes medication, which is incredibly expensive, and I know personally because my mom, she, is diabetic, and that's one of the things that she always constantly talks about is how expensive the diabetic insulin is.
Even eye drops.
Yeah, so even eye drops.
Eye drops are expensive. One of them, if you don't have insurance, it might cost you $200-300, or it might cost you up to $1,000 or some odd dollars. So people that are senior citizens, even I know we talk about rent, all of that, all of that affects everything. Like you said, I have to pay my rent because I have to have some place to live.
Yeah.
So which one am I going to juggle to figure out all of it I need? I need to eat, right? I need my medicines. I need to see if I go blind. I can't do nothing. Okay, my sugar get high, I'ma die. Right, blood pressure. Right. So then, and I like what you said, how rent control. It affects the community. It affects everyone. That lives in a particular community, and so. I really like stabilization better than I do rent control.
Yeah, rent control is more strict. It's more strict of a policy, right? So rent stabilization is like a new age, and the way you look at rent control, a lot of times it was tied to a certain dollar amount, as opposed to a certain percentage. And in a lot of places they have exception processes, and so like in St. Paul, where we were trying to do a lot of modeling the bill after, like the bill that passed in Mount Rainier and Prince George's, St. Paul, was the prime example. The draft that we were working with in Laurel, that was from St. Paul. And what they did was an exception process. So if you as a landlord, you say 3% is not good enough of an increase, I need to make a greater return because I need to do some repairs, or I need to upgrade this, you can then apply for that exception. And so that's why rent stabilization allows a lot more flexibility, right? And it allows exemptions for new buildings and stuff like that. And so there's a lot more flexibility in rent stabilization. Rent control is definitely a lot more strict. And
just wanted to get Troy in because I know Troy, he was part of that organizing effort out on the advocacy, and what was that all about? I mean, how did you?
So definitely thank you all for having both of us here, but I come before you with many other activists, whether it was PG Changemakers, CASA, Life After Release, NAACP, those organizations, as well as individuals, Kia Jefferson, Nuvia Martinez, Jorge Benitez, who was at the forefront of it. I would argue, yes, I was a part of it, but it was so many of us. I mean, if we were to have all of them in this room, they would not be able to fit. But, you know, one of my favorite Dr. King quotes is, you know, whatever affects one directly affects all indirectly. So this movement was multi-generational, multi-ethnical, multinational. We even had a senior citizen testify that, you know, she had to go to the hospital because her blood pressure went up. She got a notice. Miss Jeanette Ken, I believe her name was.
Yeah.
She testified that she had to go to the hospital, you know, because her rent was going to get raised. And then you have Miss Kia Jefferson, who her rent was going to be raised, you know, over 50%. And as she liked to say, she became the unwilling poster child of rent increases. And, you know, Martin came in and he did what he did along with Councilmember Carl DeWalt. It was at the head of it. But I said, we just mobilize every month. We showed up until we had to go to Prince George's City Council and testify before them. We did it twice, and the second time it was passed successfully, the Rent Stabilization Act, if I answer your question.
Sure.
Well, you know, it's a shame that we're in this time and in this era at this point where instead of progressing to move forward, we're moving backwards in a lot of issues in a lot of areas. You know, and if people, that's what we try to do. We try to get the information out, try to get the help out to people, you know, everybody. And because everybody doesn't read their mail, okay? And I'm gonna say that because I just got a letter in the mail from the National Housing and Housing and whatever that is. What is that? In National Housing.
There's so many. I'm not sure which one.
Yeah.
National.
Well, that one I just got it and I opened it up and they had rescheduled a meeting. You know what I mean? Now, if I had not opened it up, then I probably would have just thought it was just information, and would have gone on the date that they had, and then not shown up, to the next meeting because sometimes people get frustrated. So I urge you that when you get mail from your council members or your delegates or any mail that has to do with Prince George's County or Laurel, wherever you live, I really suggest that you open up the mail just to see what it says. Because a lot of times what happens is that we'll sit up and say, when something changes, then we'll say, well, Dad, when did that happen? Well, that happened because you weren't part of being the process of making sure the change comes in as a positive change for yourself.
Yeah.
And so that's why I thank you guys for coming out here, because some of those places that you named that you're advocate with, we've had some people that come on to the show just recently. And in fact, we had a Hispanic young lady come on to the store that told them about Casa de Maryland.
Yes.
And she was telling them, and we were talking about how that's a whole community. You know what I mean? Sure. And then we have attorneys that come on, and housing counselors, and different people. You might know some of them, I'm not sure, but we have them come on as well. So they know, because let me tell you what I just found out is that the sheriff, okay, and people laugh at me when I say this, that the sheriff can come and take your house. If somebody put a lien or something, it's just like anything else, your car, whatever. I thought the sheriff responsibility was to take care and look after the community, right?
No.
I didn't realize that the
that's
sheriff
a whole nother topic. There's so much power in the sheriff.
We're talking about stabilizations, and we're talking about these two people that their rents went up, and the sheriff come knock on your door, you're going to have a heart attack because you don't know why he's there first, okay?
If I could add to, talking about checking your mail, we don't want to pathologize anyone, but, staying in contact. I think, this communication we have between Councilmember Mitchell and myself and other advocates, and again, I'm not part of those organizations. I primarily roll solo in the county, but
freelancers.
Right. If something goes on, I don't mind, activating with them, but it's constituents being in contact with their elected officials and finding out what's going on.
Absolutely.
And when you see Councilmember Mitchell in the neighborhood, you say, hey, I have an issue. Can you help me out? And I think one of his taglines is serving the community before I was elected.
Yeah.
Right? So I'll let him pick that up.
Right. One of the things, if I can, just on that particular point, there's some nuances to the legislation.
Sure.
I don't know if I read or heard, it's like in a 1-year test phase or something like that?
So, I would say that I wanted to say a few things. One, Troy brought it up right, serving the community long before I was elected. So, of course, I come from the advocacy, public service space. And so, that's why I'm always going to be grassroots, and a grassroots leader. But I was giving credit to Mount Rainier because what Mount Rainier passed is not 1 year. What Mount Rainier passed is permanent. And so Mount Rainier was the first one that got inspired by the action that was started in Laurel. And basically the county continued to carry the torch. The county has only passed a 1-year stabilization. So it basically is 12 months, and then I think it expires 90 days after that 12 months. But they're trying to do something long term. They are trying to do something long term, and we're encouraged and hopeful that it will happen.
Well, for planners, to those who get out in front of stuff and plan stuff a year, you just kind of like get the information, as Paula said, the information and all that kind of stuff out there. So what is the expectations, and what's the measurement of successes? Is this a year?
So I just want to say from the advocacy part, and I'll say this briefly, that it never stops, right? We're still meeting. Like we have a meeting coming up this Saturday. Okay. Like it doesn't end, and it might be a year to other people. And again, it requires you to get involved. If you're standing outside and looking in, you're wondering just a year, but you don't realize we're still, pardon the term, we're still baking the bread behind the scenes. So.
Well, yes. So I know it's just a year, but we also have to think about what we accomplished in a year, right? So there's been so much accomplished in a year. Like Troy, he's been on the ground day one, I can tell you. But in a year, we've helped negotiate with landlords, helped dozens of people keep their rents lower. And some of these people weren't new tenants. Most of them were renewals who had been there, 5 years, 10 years. And then so we've also continued to spur that energy all over the county. So you have Mount Rainier that has passed the torch. Hydesville, they've already introduced theirs. The county has passed theirs. I believe that there's other cities, that are going to take up the mantle. Greenbelt, I did a presentation in Greenbelt with CASA and a policy analyst a few months ago. So I'm encouraged that other municipalities are going to pick up the mantle. We know that I was just in Montgomery County 2 days ago, and they had their hearing on the Home Act. So Montgomery County, they're following us, and
So what's the measurement? I mean, so from the county perspective, okay, we put this out there for a year. So what's the measurement of success, or what's the measurement of milestones? I mean, what's the expectation?
I'm not certain. I feel like the bill sponsor of the county bill could say that, what her measurement of success would be. But I would say the thought is keeping people in their homes, right? Like what we saw in Laurel, right? We didn't have rent stabilization. And in that first apartment complex, 332 11th Street, where we were trying to help save 10 seniors, by the time we had come to the agreement, we were only able to keep 5 of them there. This time, there's only 1 senior, and she's moving in the next 30 days, because of course, the impending rent increases that are going to come. Because as a council member, it's very difficult to negotiate, be negotiating with landlords, and you're still trying to handle other business and, do other jobs. And so it is very time consuming to, get embattled in those negotiations of those ridiculously high rents that are allowable.
I'll make this easy and say, on the national level, we saw the president give the State of the Union, and he had the entire Congress stand up and say, we're not going to take away something we gave you, right? And the benefit of policy is once you give something to people, so this was passed, now imagine taking it away from them, right? Imagine saying, we saved you for a year. Now your rent is going to go up 60, 70%. For every one of us that was out there, there were scores of others who could not make it because, as Council Member Mitchell would attest to, there were people who were working. We had people who would come to every meeting but could not make it to Prince George's Council meetings, right? So once you implement this, don't think it's going to go away. Don't, as the young kids say, don't sleep on the advocacy, right? Like, we're still behind it. So I understand the skepticism. However, we're still grinding.
Well, you know that you had to be grinding to even get a year.
Yes.
And so I'm going to say
Yes.
that. You had to be doing work.
Yeah.
There was forces pushing against it. Trust.
Yes.
Woo.
Yeah, I'm quite sure.
High power.
Yeah, I'm quite sure.
High money.
Especially since COVID had stopped it. I know people that own apartment buildings and stuff.
Sure.
And COVID, when they told them that somebody misunderstood somewhere, that you had to pay your mortgage, pay your rent.
Yeah.
People stopped paying their rent. I think it was more so in D.C. than it was anyplace else. I
Sure.
don't think that Maryland had that same situation as D.C. had, and it was more so protecting the apartment renters than it was for the people that still had to pay the rent to maintain and the taxes and things on the buildings that they own. You know what I mean? So what do you do about that like that? Okay, because you got a lot of people that knew that they should have been paying, because we were telling people the whole time, pay your mortgage on your home, pay your rent, don't pay no attention to that. Whatever you got, pay, because you got to have some place to live. The whole time we were telling people that. And I would still hear people out there talking about, well, Betty told me, I'm just making up a name, so I ain't really, don't know no Betty, okay? They said that I ain't had to pay my mortgage. They said that they said for a minute that I could, it's a freeze on it. I said, honey, you need to be paying your mortgage, okay? Pay what you can. Don't just not pay anything, because what's going to happen when that stops is they're going to be looking for their money. And then you want to know why. Why is my mortgage so high? Why is my rent so high now? You know what I mean? Talk to the people that you need to talk to, like your council member, like this advocate that's sitting here that's fighting for you, okay? Talk to them. You remember their names after the day. Who they are and what they stand for and what that means for PG County and what that means for for Maryland and period. Because you're in Laurel. You know what I mean?
Yes.
But I'm in Bowie. Okay.
Yes.
And they put up apartment buildings out here. Every time you turn around, they're putting up apartment buildings and condos out here that I've never seen before, and the community has changed.
Sure.
So, we probably need to check and find out what's going on right here in our own neighborhood. You know what I mean? Whether or not do they have a rent stabilization that's in place here?
Sure.
Because I think that May, from what I understand, May is going to be a lot of people. Now I'm going to see you talking about apartment buildings. It's going to affect those people too. I'm talking about people in homes that from what I understand, that the wave is getting ready to come after May for a lot of foreclosures, and that's what we're trying to prevent. Whether you live in an apartment community or whether you live in a home, you need to get in contact with somebody right now if you know that you're behind on your mortgage. Half is getting ready to stop. The people that can get that assistance that they need to help pay the back rent that they have. It's not just for homeowners, it's for anybody that has a mortgage. So
of course,
they need those people that you're advocating for need to know that that's getting ready to go away. And all they have to do is go out on a website. It's not that hard to do, to apply for it, but they need to apply. Either they're gonna say yes or no. But if you don't do anything, now you have a different kind of problem. You know what I mean?
Sure.
Now we're going to have homelessness, which we do have. I'm going to say in Bowie, and I'm surprised. We have a lot of people that are now living in, let me ask you this question.
Sure.
One time out in the suburbs, you came to the suburbs because you didn't have to worry about people panhandling, okay? So now there's an influx of people panhandling out in front of stores and, communities and things like that. And it makes people frightened, especially older people or women shopping by themselves and stuff. What is it that we can do? Because if stabilization is not put in place, I'm with you guys. If it's not put in place and people don't use the resources that they have that can kind of get them out that problem that they're having right this minute, then we're going to have a lot of panhandlers out here. we're going to have a lot of people that are on the streets. I didn't realize that we had so many homes that are allowed in a neighborhood, you know, I'm talking about a residential neighborhood, that, you know, people can live. Now, when did that change? I know you have to know. When did that change that I know they had it in D.C., but I'm now talking about Maryland. When did that change that we could have all these houses that have, you know, people what you call that place?
Part of that, now, you know,
I was just trying to send a question.
Go ahead. But part of that is part of what the is saying relative to getting involved, because now you have ordinances, you have changing ordinances, you have changing variances, and so if you're not actively involved and understand that dynamic, from homeowners to politicians to whoever, their variances, their ordinances change, and so a developer comes in with money and they sit down and they have open public meetings and nobody comes and shows up, and then, you know.
That's why I said that you need to read your mail.
But I mean,
so you know, I mean, I think a lot of that is overdevelopment. Of course, as you said, you know, a lot of the population isn't informed on what is going on with development, and then just the quality of development, right? Like, so one of the things that I've realized from a homeowner's perspective in Prince George's County is the quality of homes that are being built, and Prince George's quality isn't the highest quality of homes, right? Like, but that is what we accept. That's what we allow. That's what we sign off. And so, you know, kind of to speaking to your point of being everyone should aspire to be a homeowner, right? But I know that the truth of the matter is everyone is not going to be a homeowner, right? And truth of the matter is some people say they desire not to be, even though they financially can, you know, afford to be a homeowner. But I do think that one of the things that I had a problem with was the quality of housing in some of these places, and that was really like my discontent a lot of times, was like, how dare you ask for more money for this place, even though you haven't been maintaining, even though you haven't been upgrading, even though you haven't been complying to the maintenance requests. And, you know, so those are a lot of things that really upset me, you know, as I was seeing. And what you're going to see is you're going to see more out-of-state people buying up single-family homes, you know, and sitting on them or renting them out, right? And so we already see that.
Yep, and you're absolutely right. We already see that. We see that happening. And where they have these people, 5 and 6 different, maybe guys, living in one house, and they pay this, you know, pay a mortgage to, and one guy tells me all the time, well, I can't go home until I make another $16 because I have to pay every day. Okay, you know, I mean, so what happens? I've offered to turn them over to the veterans people that I know that could help them, you know, but I don't know whether it's easier to panhandle them, you know, and make money than it is for you to go someplace and get some, you know, organization that is supposed to help you get where you need to be so that you can pay a mortgage someplace, so you can rent a home somewhere, so you can get an apartment someplace on your own. I appreciate you guys coming out. I know we get off step. That's what we do here, okay? Because there's so many different things. You only have somebody for 20 minutes, and it's 15 million things by you sitting there. I want to ask you. You know what I mean?
Of course.
So we'll invite them back.
Yeah. Then y'all are more than welcome to come back, so that we can pick another topic, okay, or finish on this one, okay? Actually, you can see the other half of this on the Lady Nighthawk show, okay? So whatever you miss, then you can see it on the Lady Nighthawk show, because they'll come out on the same day. So with that, I thank you.
Thank you.
I thank you for the advocacy work that you're doing. I'm thank you for what you're doing as well, and I thank you for seeing you, buddy, and bringing them on.
Always a pleasure.
All right. So with that, we want to say good night, and I want y'all to look at that camera right there and say good night to everybody in PG County.
Bye, PG.
Learn the real major keys to getting to college at getschool.com.